Good evening, folks, and welcome to the live stream. Sorry I'm a little bit late. I had a problem with my ear. So well, I had to do this. Okay, apologies. So I hope everyone's very well. Hope you had a nice weekend and you're ready for some more crazy stuff this week. We're off to a good start, aren't we? So we're going to talk a bit about Trump, of course. He has his new vice president, and he had an incident recently. I'm not going to get too much into that. Also, some changes, some big news in Wales, of course. What happened today? Farage's Milkshake lady is up in court, and of course, we'll talk a little bit about the King's speech, which is taking place tomorrow, I believe. But I wanted to start off with this story here about the Brexit Museum. It actually turns out maybe the Brexit Museum isn't all that terrible an idea after all, because the guy who set it up wants to talk about British history and both sides of the Brexit debate. But we got an interesting story within the story that I want to share with you here.
As propaganda or
let me increase the volume here. It's a little bit low.
PR towards children, and even stuff from places like Estonia. This is from the Estonian referendum on its accession. So it's not just about Britain and the UK, it's about the wider vision across all the parts of the political spectrum and views and opinions on where Europe was heading and should be heading.
Lee, I just want to talk viewers through something which I would have donated. I stole a flag from the European Parliament in Strasbourg. You can see on screen here, this is me nicking the...
So this is Martin Dobney, who was a member of the European Parliament for the Brexit Party. So he's admitting on TV that he stole the Union flag from the European Parliament in Brussels. But what he did next with the flag is interesting.
The flag, we called that Operation Liberate Jack. Do you know why I was going to steal that? I found out, Lee Rotherham, that all of the flags in all of the European were being put into storage in an underground vault until such a time that the United Kingdom decided to rejoin the European Union. I wasn't having that. I had a couple of sherbets, I must confess. I took that flag.
In the European Parliament? I don't believe that for a second.
European Parliament, and then you can see on the next picture, I took it back home to my house, into my kitchen. I'm holding it up there. That's me in my kitchen with the flag, beg your pardon, from Strasbourg. And I got told off. Nigel Farage said, Daubney, you better get that flag back, because they threatened to kick me out of the Parliament. But I had one last sleep with it, literally. Next picture. That's it on my bed. A bit of a kind of Vanity Fair, Brit Pop special. That's the flag from Strasbourg. I slept under it for one night. Sadly, I had to return.
He slept with the flag. Okay, I hope I hope he returned it dry cleaned. Okay, at least that. Okay, you know, it would be it's pretty terrible that whoever was responsible for the flags ended up having to explain to, I don't know, their superiors that some MEP stole the flag. Well, hopefully they returned it at least in the same condition it was stolen in. You know, the stains were removed.
That, Lee Rotherham, but tell us, when do you plan to open? How can people get involved? And if, more to the point, if anybody...
Yes, Volkswagen Polo. Yes, your response is perfect. I bet he shagged the flag too. Yeah, of course he did. You know, this is a Brexiteer we're talking about. You know, I honestly thought that some of these people were just pretending to be Brexiteers, pretending to jump on board Nigel Farage's boat or barge or bus or whatever it was, for the limelight or for, you know, for the financial incentives that came along with it. But it seems some of these people truly believed in what Farage was selling. Cuckoo alert. The Scottish should replace the Union flag. Yes, no flag is safe from that crowd. Once again, I hope he returned it dry cleaned, at least that. So this is the Brexit Museum. We still don't have an opening date. The the guy who's running it was quizzed, I think, a number of times about an opening date. Well, we don't have an opening date, but he's been asking people, if you have any memorabilia you can send in, they will place it in the museum, in the Brexit Museum. I don't know why they called it the Brexit Museum. I could think of better names, especially as they say that it's not just about Brexit, it's about British history. But anyway, European Commission offered X an illegal secret deal. If we quietly censored speech without telling anyone, they would not fine us, said Elon Musk. Yeah. Should we trust Elon Musk? Allegedly, Elon Musk is giving $45 million a day or a week or something to the Donald Trump campaign. Then it turned out, no, he's not actually doing that. So I think we should, take whatever Elon Musk says with a massive pinch of salt. The butcher's apron used as comfort blanket. Anyway, let's move on. So Vaughan getting to quit as Welsh First Minister. So this was sort of on the cards. It was not a huge surprise. Vaughan Getting has announced he's quitting as the Welsh First Minister after 4 members of his government resigned in protest over his leadership. In a statement on Tuesday morning, Mr. Getting said he had taken the difficult decision to begin the process of stepping down and will now discuss the timetable for the election of his successor. Mr. Getting lost a vote of no confidence last month following a row over his decision to sack one of his ministers and questions about donations he took while running as the Welsh Labour leader, resulting in Labour's cooperation deal in the Senedd and Plaid Cymru collapsing, with Plaid Cymru collapsing. Having only been elected in March, Mr. Getting said that his statement that he had hoped over the summer a period of reflection, rebuilding and renewal could take place under his leadership. I recognise now that is not possible, he added. So, yes, he's going, what's going to happen next? Well, there'll be probably another leadership campaign. It's strange that he stayed in place for so long after a no confidence vote. And it turns out that I think 2 ministers didn't turn up for the vote, or one minister didn't, or one member of the Scottish Assembly didn't turn up for the vote, and that's why he lost, which was pretty terrible, I think. Politics Social is here. Hi, Politics Social. Well, great to have you on the stream. Hey, Max. Here's something that could be funny. Do you think that Brexit caused the rise in immigration? Well, yes. Like what happened was after the ending of freedom of movement, the NHS, social care, businesses, farming, all of these different sections of the economy needed workers, and wages went up because obviously in regards to supply and demand, some wages increased, so there was a greater demand for workers and people started coming as a result of Brexit. Welsh, Max. Sorry, what did I say? Scottish? Apologies, I meant to say Welsh. So used to talking about Scottish independence. I'm thinking of Welsh independence. Hi from Graham and Ollie. Thank you so much for that. Hi from those guys. Great to hear from that from those guys. Max, what is your preference to replacing Getting? I don't know because I haven't been. I feel terrible saying this because I haven't been following Welsh politics. So I don't know who's in the running. So I'll just be honest about that. I haven't been following it, so I don't know who would be good to replace him. And I don't know what's going. Is there going to be? So I presume there'll be another vote for. It'll be like, I imagine it's like the Scottish Parliament where they have to vote. The entire Assembly or the Parliament has to vote for the new leader. So I would imagine Scottish Labour. Sorry, I keep saying Welsh Labour have enough votes, so they will. They won't have a problem replacing the current or the former First Minister with a new First Minister. So, but I don't know who's in the running in Welsh Labour for this. But I don't see a problem with the transition of power. Thanks, Ivan. Sorry, I can't answer your question there. Rob Brydon could be a possibility, is mentioned by Bill. End of freedom of movement, it just transitioned to India. Because following the ending of freedom of movement as a result of Brexit, businesses still needed people. But if they couldn't find European ones, they had to look further afield. There isn't a sufficient supply, of course, and the visa system has made it more difficult for example, social care to get carers in, and it's more expensive. But yes, immigration did increase as a direct result of Brexit. Rob, as an actor, would prefer Michael Sheen. Michael Sheen could, yeah, I'm familiar with Michael Sheen somewhat, so that'd be good. It's in Wales. They do a bit of druidic slam poetry, then drink 8 pints and arm wrestle over it. Now, that's something I would like to see. Do it the old style. Do it the old way. Okay, guys, let's move on. Of course, the big story this week, of course, is Donald Trump. What's happened with Donald Trump? As you can imagine, I had a bit of a run-in as well. So, it's funny because as soon as Donald Trump was pictured twice at least without any bandages on after he got shot. One was where he was playing golf, and another was where was he? He was getting off his airplane. So he was getting off his airplane. He wasn't wearing any bandage, and then he was playing golf and he wasn't wearing any bandage. But for the Republican convention, of course, it's about theater, so he has to wear his bandage to show, look, I'm back. I don't really have any serious injuries, but I want to play to the crowd.
It was the day he wasn't meant to see, but he wasn't going to miss it. Donald Trump, with a bandaged right ear, made an evening appearance on day one of the Republican convention. There was no set-piece speech.
Exactly, says Noddy. Milk it, milk it, milk it.
That's scheduled for Thursday. This was the day a subdued Donald Trump received his party's nomination and took its applause.
Donald J. Trump for the office of President of the United States!
Definitely not a cult. Some people call it a cult. I don't think it's a cult at all.
This was roll call, the formal process of picking the party's candidate. There was celebration, but reflection too, of shocking events at the weekend.
I think it shows the comparison between him and Biden, one being very weak and the other being very strong.
We need to figure out how to go through this together, and I think Trump is really going to help pave the way for those conversations.
Support the president, volunteer for him.
On the day the party picked Trump, he chose Senator J.D. Vance as his running mate.
The results were good.
There's a big problem now for Donald Trump is that this guy could upstage him, and that would not be very good, because this guy, J.D. Vance, who recently insulted Britain and describing it as Islamic, and he actually was very critical of Trump some years ago. Of course, that's all forgotten immediately after he's made vice president or candidate for vice president. But I think Trump is worried about having somebody like this, because he could steal his thunder, and he'll always be looking over his shoulder at people like this, because they're opportunists and they're ambitious, and that's not what Donald Trump wants around him. I honestly don't know why he chose. I don't know why he chose this candidate, this individual, because unless Trump is going to try and pivot to the center, and then he's going to be his right-wing attack dog. That could be the approach, because Trump was talking about unity from Donald Trump. So it could be the case that he's playing this sort of game of, I'm going to run to the center, but the vice president will be, pumping the far right as much as possible.
Called Donald Trump cultural heroine, but he's the Trump critic who turned. He'll be vice president if they win in November. Parts of Milwaukee had a ghost town feel as streets were sealed off for this convention. Standard procedure, stressed by...
So the pro-gun Or, Republican Party don't want people bringing guns into the convention.
Recent events.
So guns in school is okay, but guns at the Republican convention, no way. No way, Jose. And they've also used this is not just because of the attack on Trump. This has been always the case. You're not allowed to bring any guns, or they're strictly controlled in the Republican convention. Isn't that so strange? A party that's so pro-gun, guns in schools, guns in supermarkets, guns in church, guns in hospitals, guns everywhere, but not at the Republican convention.
Outside the city centre, these were scenes of protest against the party in residence. Political division hasn't gone away, even if it is under review. On a day Donald Trump's work trip took him to Wisconsin, he received significant news from home in Florida. A judge has dismissed the criminal case against him of mishandling classified documents and concealing them at his home in Mar-a-Lago.
Why? Why was that? Why was that the case? It's very strange.
Florida decision is the latest in a string of results going Donald Trump's way. From the TV debate with Joe Biden through Supreme Court ruling to a delayed sentencing in New York. The day ended with tycoon Elon Musk pledging to donate more than $200 million to the Trump campaign. To look at the last month is to look at the candidate who it seems can't lose.
So I initially came out with the idea that it's over. Donald Trump has won it. He has the sympathy vote. He's going to milk this as much as he can. But I think he runs the risk of overdoing it. And if he does, then he'll run the risk of losing his supporters. Because if he goes extreme, if he comes out and says we're going to have to destroy everyone who disagrees with us, it's an open season on the Democrats. If he doesn't rein in the rhetoric and his supporters' rhetoric, I think this is going to turn off independents, because it's independents that you need to win the election. You have your base, whichever percentage of the vote that is. You have the Democrats, are obviously they have their base, but it's the people in the middle, in the swing states, the independents so-called, that you need to win over. And I think this could be a chance for Trump if he doesn't pivot to the center, if he doesn't appeal to independence, if he doesn't talk about unity, but instead goes and doubles down on hardline rhetoric, on far-right rhetoric, on apocalypse, then this is going to turn off independent voters, and they're going to go, look, it's better to stick with Joe Biden. Even though we don't like him, we're not sure if he's still going to be around, but we don't want a dictator in charge. We don't want somebody who's completely insane in this sense. JD, I still think it exists, a myth. What's that? He's a vacuous narcissist. Yes, he's in it for himself. It's not about. It's exactly like Nigel Farage in Clacton. That's what it's about. Okay, what can I get out of this? Is it about the American people? No. Is it about the people of Clacton? No. At what stage will the voters in Clacton realize that Nigel Farage doesn't give a shit about them? At what stage will it be? Have they woken up already to this? The fact that he's abandoned Clacton and gone to the US to meet with Trump, even though some are saying that he didn't even go into hospital. But Nigel Farage had already booked a flight to be by his side. What the hell? Once again, it's about how can I milk this? How can I take advantage of this situation? They're two grifters grifting off each other in a sense. Look at Project 2025. Yeah, I'm not going to go into Project 2025. I had a quick look at some of it, and it's really scary stuff. It's really, really concerning. It's very worrying, because this is it's basically the manifesto of the Trump regime. If they get in, if he's elected, it will be what he wants to do, what he wants to achieve. Here is an example of Mr. Vance, not talking about Britain this time, but talking about unhappy marriages.
This idea that these marriages were fundamentally, they were maybe even violent, but certainly they were unhappy. And so getting rid of them and making it easier for people to shift spouses like they change their underwear, that's going to make people happier in the long term. And maybe it worked out for the moms and dads, though I'm skeptical, but it really didn't work out for the kids of those marriages. And I think that's what all of us should.
So it says here, Donald Trump's VP nominee J.D. Vance suggests people should be more willing to stay in violent and unhappy marriages for the sake of their children. So he's part of these. Why is his mic so bad? I'm sorry. Some of the recordings are really bad here. Apologies for that. But he's one of these extreme right people, extreme Christian people who are like divorce should be banned by. Like they claim to be libertarians. They claim to be concerned about the overreach of the state. But as soon as they're in power, they want to ban everything that they don't like. Like ban divorce, ban abortion, ban religions that are not Judeo-Christian. Like this is their approach to everything. Ban trans people. I think it's the state of Florida want to ban trans people. It's not like just not give them the services that they require, but ban them, turn them into persona non grata. Alexis, thank you so much for that super chat. Being informed is at odds with my sanity. Yes, unfortunately these people exist. People like J.D. Vance, people like Donald Trump, Nigel Farage, these people exist, and they have a massive platform. You can see here, Christian something. These people are very concerning because they claim, we care about we care about personal freedoms, but at the same time we want to use the state to turn a democracy into Gilead, from Handmaid's Tale. This is their goal. This is what they would love to achieve. He's a Catholic convert, likely just because he admitted the church's hierarchy. He admired the church's hierarchy and tradition. Yes, a bit like Jacob Rees-Mogg. I'm not in for the charity aspect. I'm in for the power aspect, the power and ritual. I love the costumes. I love dressing up. Like they criticize drag queens, but they kiss the ring of a guy in a dress as often as possible. And like the Vatican during the fascist period, the church is very happy to go along with the far right because they get something out of it as well.
Channel 4 News can reveal that Thomas Crooks's father, the owner of the rifle that was used to shoot at Donald Trump, was held on a database and profiled by the former president's election campaign and identified by them as a strong Republican supporter, gun owner and hunter.
This is insane. It's like the person who threw the milkshake at Nigel Farage turned out to be somebody who had paid £25 to Nigel Farage's campaign, had a big poster of Nigel Farage on her wall, and I don't know what else would it be the case of. This is insane.
The information was compiled as part of a secret Republican project to gather data on millions of gun owners across America and use it to target pro-gun messages in the run-up to the 2016 election.
That worked out very well, didn't it? Like, the whole context that was being pushed, or the narrative, I should say, that was being pushed was, well, this is obviously a Democrat who attacked Donald Trump. Because, and they were trying to blame Joe Biden. They were trying to blame all of this on Joe Biden. Joe Biden, of course, had nothing to do with this. But as it turned out, it was a Republican, or the son of a Republican, who attacked Trump. A gun-owning son of a Republican.
And here's why they did it. The city of Pittsburgh is a key battleground in the
Is the rifle on sale on eBay? Not yet. It will be eventually.
Political swing state of Pennsylvania, so voters here are always heavily profiled and targeted by political parties, like the Trump campaign in 2016, which held voters' details on a database, including, as we've discovered, the shooter's family, Matthew Crooks and his wife Mary, who lived here.
How is this legal? How is it legal to have all of this? Like, this wouldn't happen in Europe because you wouldn't be able to access people's data like this. This is exactly what the Tories in Britain want. They want to be able to access people's names and addresses, whether they're part of different organizations, whether they can be targeted in campaigns. This is insane. This would not be allowed in Europe because you wouldn't be able to access people's information without their consent. Do these people consent to this? Do they know that the Republican Party has all this information in a database? If I were I don't know if it's possible to do this, but I would sue. Say, how the hell have you this information on me?
At 2506 Milford Drive in Bethel Park. We know they profiled them using secret computer models to identify likely gun owners and enthusiasts, and Mr. Crooks scored very highly, 0.99 out of 1 for being a gun owner and 0.95 out of 1 for being a hunter. In fact,
I wonder, would the turnout have been different if it had been the father and not the son who was involved?
Out of more than 19,000 people in Bethel Park who were profiled, Mr. Crooks was in the top 20, and the database classified him as a strong GOP or Republican voter.
My goodness. It's legal. It's all public records. Standard tier stuff, Max. Collecting information on voters, selling it off to political parties, and making a massive profit out of it. So you can manipulate the public into, well, these people are gun owners, let's campaign on gun rights, for example, to these people. Make sure that they turn out, tell them that, what was it? Bill Clinton is going to take your guns. Barack Obama is going to take your guns. Hillary Clinton is going to take your guns. Joe Biden is going to take your guns. And these people still come out and vote for the Republicans. Why is Channel 4 republishing this information? It's a report. It's actually, I don't know why they're doing it, but it's a report from the UN. Well, it's public information now. Manipulate gun owners to use guns. It's not so much to use guns, but to come out and vote for a party that defends your right to access, heavy machine guns and stuff like that. Grenades, nukes. It's all in the Constitution. Got to one of the recent Supreme Court of the United States decisions, Max. Well, okay. Continuing with Donald Trump for a little bit more, because it's not going away anytime soon, unfortunately. It just gets crazier and crazier. So I just want to show you this report from the news agents who visited the convention and had some interesting things to say about what they saw. Yoni, thank you so much for that super chat. At times like this, I'm happy GDPR exists. Me too. It's a pain in the backside, but at least, the Republican Party in the US is not accessing my data. But unfortunately, the Tories wanted to sell this off to the Americans, and hopefully the Labour Party will not do that now. But, these companies have already got their feet under the table.
The conversations in this hall are utterly dystopian. If you ask them whether it matters that Donald Trump's a convicted criminal, they will tell you he isn't.
Of course they'll say that. Like, first of all, they say he's not. Then if you present evidence that he is, then they say, well, it's biased against him. Then if you say, well, the judge is actually, the judge was appointed by him, then they'll just say it's fake news. So there's nothing, I've mentioned this before, there's nothing you can say to a Trump supporter that will convince them not to vote for Trump. I said, probably the only thing I could come up with is maybe if Donald Trump converted to Islam, that's probably the only way he would lose support. But some of his supporters would probably convert to Islam as well, because, you know, they'd be expecting some sort of Trump version of Islam that they could convert to as well. They'd abandon Christianity and join Trump's version of Islam. But, you know, apart from that, I don't think there's anything, because these people are in a cult. And it's very easy. It's very easy a very easy way of finding out whether you're in a cult or not is, do you have any negative views of the cult leader? So if you want to ask people if they're, you know, Reform UK voters or supporters, if you want to find out if your Uncle John or whatever is in a cult, ask him to describe some negative things about Nigel Farage. Give me 5 things you don't like about Nigel Farage. And if he can't come up with anything, then he's in a cult. And it's the same with Trump. They can't come up with anything negative about Trump, so then it's in a cult. So then you can't engage with people like this. It's practically impossible. There have been some attempts to de-radicalize people, and one good way was talking about how they feel abandoned or how they feel discriminated against. And getting them to describe their feeling about being discriminated against. Doesn't matter what the discrimination is, but then asking them, getting them to meet people who are discriminated in a different way, and having them sit down and talk about these things together. And then it's a way of de-radicalizing some of these, because then they realize, wait a minute, these Mexicans, you know, they're ordinary people. They're people like me who just want to, you know, have a secure job, pay the bills, send kids to college or whatever it is in the US. That's what they want. And, you know, I've been told by the media that they're all criminals and rapists and stuff like this. Maybe I need to take a step back. They're just like me. They have the same concerns as I have. So you need to sit the people down together. Unfortunately, with social media, we don't have this. You know, in a way, social media has destroyed all of this. Ivan, thank you so much for that super chat. For different reasons, it's the same in the UK for people who defend Boris Johnson no matter what. Yes, he was doing his best. Remember that during the pandemic, Boris Johnson was doing his best. You know, it's exactly the same with Boris Johnson. It was a cult around him. It sort of fell apart, I think, with Partygate, because if it was just corruption, people would have just ignored it. But ordinary people who realize, look, I wasn't able to be with my loved one during, you know, their last moments. I followed the rules. I wore a mask. I socially distanced. I did everything I could because it was the right thing to do. And then I saw Boris Johnson having a party. Then I tried to dismiss it and say, well, you know, it was a work do. But then I think it marinated in people's minds, even supporters of Boris Johnson, and then they realized, no, I can't defend this. Like, why am I defending it? So it's not as bad as the US. It was pretty bad under Boris Johnson. It's pretty bad with Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage can do whatever the hell he wants. Like the people in Clacton, like they voted for him to represent them in Parliament, and what is he doing? He's in the US at the moment. Maybe he's back for Parliament tomorrow, but is he going to be asking questions, the concerns his constituents have? No, it's about him. It's always been about him. Same in the European Parliament. He was supposed to attend numerous fishing committees. He attended one, I believe, and probably left early and took, you know, half the drinks and biscuits with him. Thanks, Ivan. Sorry, I keep saying Ivan. in Italy, it's Ivan. Brad, thank you so much for that super chat as well. Trump's love of steaks must have caused his RS8 to smell of them. Not sure what that is. Explaining why so many try to lick them, to lick him there. Okay. Sorry. Why was it like at? Okay, apologies for that. Yeah, causes arse to smell of them. That's why somebody tried to lick him there. Yes, including Farage. Farage is right up there, more than anyone else, I think, which is really creepy. Russell Brand is MAGA now. Russell Brand is a grifter. Russell Brand used to be on the left. Then he saw that sort of dried up. Then he became right wing. But you know, I think he passed through a sort of conspiracy theory streak for a bit, and then he became far right. So, you know, when that runs out of steam, he'll move on to the next one. I'm pretty sure about that. Yeah, Farage is definitely a biscuit thief. Anyway, let's get back to this.
I simply don't believe it. If you ask whether Hunter Biden is a convicted criminal, they'll say he didn't get long enough and his dad should be in prison too.
It's like, not sins of the father go to the son, but sins of the son go up also to the father.
There is literally total asymmetry on how the people here see the rule of law.
They see the rule of law as such. If Donald Trump does something wrong, it's not really wrong. If anyone else does something wrong, they need to be put in prison.
To think that they were kind of turning it on, putting it on, trying to spin this to the media. But I think something has actually happened. I think it has become more cultish. I genuinely think...
It's always been cultish. Like back in 2016, it was cultish. It's just there's more people in the cult now.
The people who are spouting this garbage are starting to believe what they're saying. And I should just say before we go, I mentioned the weirdos and the misfits. I mean, there is a really kind of distasteful thing going on, which is the RNC seems to be where sort of former celebrities come to reinvigorate their fallen celebrity status.
We're going to Liz Truss, Boris Johnson, Nigel Farage.
Well, funny you mention Liz Truss, Boris Johnson, who spoke yesterday to an absolutely empty room. We couldn't believe the pictures. We were expecting it to fill up until we understood that was as full as the room was going to get. But the other person that I bumped into was Russell Brand, who was on a talk show called Patriot. And he had with him a very young female assistant who was trying to keep us as far away from him as she could. And I was listening quite intensely to the interview. And the last question that the interviewer asked was, "So, Russell, there are a lot of young men listening to you here." And I thought, oh, he's going to go for it. Here's the bullseye. And then he said, "Tell us about fatherhood." It was unbelievable to see how much latitude and how much encouragement somebody who has been accused of multiple sexual allegations will get in a place like this. I understand that the Met are interviewing 25 separate women in terms of investigations into his alleged sexual abuse. None of that was discussed yesterday. When he came off air, I tried to grab his arm. He shot me daggers and fled.
Excuse me. Can't imagine why.
Yeah. Funny that. He wasn't going to get that sort of question from you.
Any luck finding Liz?
I never understood the attraction of Russell Brand. I honestly, like when he was on the left, he was very good at criticizing Nigel Farage. Now he's probably, sitting down with Nigel Farage, bosom buddies. But there was always something dodgy about him. I always thought there was something dodgy. I don't know what it was. I think it was this. He came across as very narcissistic. Oh, look how cool I am. I'm the best and stuff like this. It just really, I don't know. I never really liked the guy. And I never understood the attraction people have towards him. Anyway, guys, we're about halfway through the stream, so I want to take a short comedy moment, and we'll be back in just a jiffy with some more serious stuff. Hope you enjoy this.
The skies are safe in Ireland. The 77th annual Blessing of the Plains will take place this year in Dublin Airport. There was some concern that the planes would not be blessed this year because a lot of people think that God is a load of shite. Shut up to fuck. I don't care what you believe. We are going up into the fucking sky. We're not meant to be up there. And last year it came out that Boeing was lubing up the wings with fucking washing up liquid. I'll take everything I can get. I want a crack team of priests on the job. It'll do you no fucking harm if the plane you're on was blessed. I say baptise the planes, give them a nice communion, get them some money and a bouncy castle if they want. Whatever we can do to keep the planes happy. I never heard of a plane crashing because it was too holy. Oh, that plane was too Catholic. It was thinking about a lovely mass it was at recently and the engine fell off. Flying is the safest form of transport. Let's keep it that way. Follow me. I'm delicious.
I recently discovered this guy and he is amazing. So let's move on. Never follow him because it was too holy. Anyway, Labour MP swears into Commons for second time after taking oath to King under protest. So a Labour MP has been forced to swear into the House of Commons for a second time after he failed to use the correct wording in his first attempt last week. Like, this is just insane. You know, Boris Johnson lied and lied and lied and lied and lied in the House of Commons. Other Conservatives, ministers and MPs lied and lied and lied and lied in the House of Commons. And you are not allowed, and you're still not allowed, to say that they lied. You have to say that they unintentionally misrepresented Parliament. But, you know, lying in Parliament is A-OK. Nothing wrong with it. You're allowed to lie in Parliament, but you're not allowed to say the wrong bit of the oath becoming it. People are losing their minds over this. So I'm sort of losing my mind over this for a different reason. Clive Lewis, who's a great guy, and I follow him on Twitter, and he's a great MP. I think he does great things for his constituents. He's somebody who truly cares about issues like poverty and social justice, and he needs to be somebody who's recognised for that. He's a great MP, a great politician, a great guy. So Clive Lewis, who represents Norwich South, has been threatened with legal action. By whom? If he does not pledge allegiance to King Charles's heirs and successors as required by law. Swearing in is the process in which MPs and members of the House of Lords take an oath of allegiance to the Crown before officially taking their seats in Parliament. Now, the reason for this is it's a long history here about separation of the power of the Crown and Parliament. Anyway, while members can either swear in using a religious text or take a non-religious solemn affirmation before taking their place in Parliament, they must do so by pledging their loyalty to the King as laid out in the law dating back to 1866. But Mr. Lewis, who opposes the monarchy, said in his first intuition, "I take the oath under protest and in the hope that one day my fellow citizens will democratically decide to live in a republic. Until that time, I do solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare and affirm that I will be faithful and true and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles according to the law." On Tuesday, Mr. Lewis returned to the House of Commons to swear in for a second time after being warned by the Commons authorities that he faced a fine of £500 and the prospect of losing his seat if he failed to do so. Once again, you can lie in Parliament, but if you don't say King and his heirs and successors, if you don't include that part, you risk a £500 fine and losing your seat. Like, at no stage was Boris Johnson at risk of losing his seat over lying. They literally forced him to lie to get sworn in. Yes, this is well said, Yoni. This is actually this is forcing someone to lie in order to become an MP. This is technically worse than what Boris Johnson did, because Boris Johnson lied and was not punished. This is forcing somebody to lie in order to avoid a punishment. It's a joke. It's an absolute joke. Look, I understand the history here, okay? The separation of powers between the King and Parliament, and how Parliament, there were wars fought over this, but we're talking about the 14th, 15th century. Or 15th, 16th century. But we're not talking, like, can we not move on from this? Like, make it symbolic. Okay, if you want to swear allegiance to the King, like, at the end of the day, the King has no power. The King is not really going to, we saw it, we've seen numerous examples. The King is not going to say, I'm not going to sign this bill because I disagree with it. It's a formality. It's all a formality, but it's a pathetic formality. Because there are more important things than formality. Because the fact that MPs, ministers and prime ministers can lie through their teeth, and this has massive consequences on ordinary people, that doesn't get punished. But somebody who refuses to say a bit of an oath that no one really believes, because it's just words, it's not actions, it's just words, can lose their seat over it. This is not just about republicanism, okay? This is beyond that. This is about formality being more important than reality. been more important than democracy. Because Boris Johnson couldn't be removed for lying. He eventually was forced out. But how many times did Boris Johnson lie before there was actually any action taken against him? He put me off sausages. That's about. Tradition's an excuse to keep lazy thinkers in line. Well said, Brad. Well, that's the tweet of the night. That's the comment of the night, I think. It's fundamental to have an allegiance to the constituents who put you in Parliament. I can understand that. That would be, the constituents have an allegiance to my constituents. I'm going to do what my constituents have put me. And that's what should be in the oath. That's what the oath should be about. I'm pledging allegiance. I'm going to do the work of my constituent because they're the ones who voted for you. They're the ones who put you there. That would make more sense than allegiance to the king and his heirs and successors. Like, you're also swearing allegiance to somebody you don't know. At least your constituents, you should know them. You've at least met them. But you're also swearing allegiance to people you may never meet. For example, the heir and successor. Tradition is peer pressure from dead people. Well said, Joe Lefty. Yeah, I don't remember who came up with that phrase, but it's amazing. It's perfect. Hey, Maximilian, what do you think of the royal family? Don't get me started on the royal family. Look, I understand the unity it creates in society. People rally around the king during difficult times. It was great maybe to have a king during the Second World War, but the family also had some dodgy dealings as well with Germany. But it created a symbol of hope for people, and I think that is something positive during difficult times. Also difficult times when Queen Elizabeth provided a sort of beacon for people to rally around. But I think it comes at a massive cost. And the idea that someone can become king not through merit, the head of state, not through some sort of merit, but because, well, my dad was, or my mum was, and the next king will be my son, or my daughter will be next royal, the next head of state. There's something weird about that, no? And, we say, well, if you get in a president, the president mightn't be really good. But you can vote that president out. That president can't be removed. But, what if some weird twist of fate happened and Prince Andrew became king? And he was like, okay, I'm king now. Suck it up, peasants. There's nothing you can do about it. There's literally nothing you can do. Can Parliament remove the king? Probably not. The only way you'd remove the king maybe is if the armed forces resisted. But the armed forces also take pledge allegiance to the king. So that's not going to really happen. Jacob Rees-Mogg can't say the oath without getting arrested. Thank you, Brad. Brad always brings it down a notch. No. I'm losing my war wound bandage. That's a wonderful image that's stuck in my mind now. It's burnt into my brain. It's going to stay there for the rest of the night. The Windsors are German. Yes. So, cut Lewis a bit of slack here. He didn't say all the words. Is it the end of the world? No. And what's interesting, a different sort of tangent here would be, what if they changed the words? What if they said, actually, you don't have to swear allegiance to the king, but you swear allegiance to your constituents? Well, then that would open the door for Sinn Féin to come in, because Sinn Féin are saying that they won't join. Well, it's a bit more complicated than that, but technically, part of the reason why they're not joining is because they have to swear allegiance to the king. So if that was removed, Sinn Féin could take their seats. And I think it would be good for Sinn Féin to take their seats if they did. I'm not saying that they have to, but I think it'd be good for them to see them in Parliament asking questions, trying to hold the government to account. I keep saying trying to hold the government to account because, it's difficult to hold a government with a massive majority to account. And if Parliament doesn't work, then it's even more difficult. Just joined. Is this the woman product on his ear? This one? No, it's a bandage because I got I had an accident. Anyway, Nigel Farage, woman accused of throwing milkshake over Reform UK leader denies assault. So this is the lady who made Hero of the Week, I think it was a couple of weeks back. Victoria Thomas Bowen from Clacton-on-Sea. So she's a constituent, she has every right to protest her MP not doing his job. Pleads not guilty to charges of assault by beating and criminal damage. Beating. It was a milkshake. Poor girl tripped. Yes, it was an accident. 25-year-old woman accused of throwing a milkshake over Nigel Farage has pleaded not guilty to charges of assault by beating and she should be okay because there are no prisons. The prisons are full, so she's not going to be sent to prison. Thank the Tories for that, and thank Nigel Farage for making sure that the Tories got an 80-seat majority under Boris Johnson where they didn't build enough prisons. So it's sort of what goes around comes around in a sense. Mr. Farage was doused with liquid as he left a Witherspoon's pub Witherspoon's in the seaside town on the 4th of June. The Reform UK leader, now the Clacton MP, had earlier held a rally in the area as part of the general election campaign. Prosecutors say £30 of criminal damage was caused to a jacket belonging to a member of Mr. Farage's team. That wasn't his jacket. So he took somebody else's jacket. That's pretty crappy. Caroline Liggins, representing Ms. Bowen, said, my client strongly protests her innocence and looks forward to fighting this unjust case in court. Ms. Bowen was released on unconditional bail to appeal before the same court for trial on the 21st of October. She'll be found guilty, I believe, because no, well, I don't know whether she'll be found guilty or not. I don't want to. Will there be a jury in this trial? I don't know. Anyway, so, some say she tripped. To a member of the team, he was wearing a loaner. Yeah, it seems he was wearing somebody else's jacket. Like, can Nigel Farage not even have his own jacket? Does he not take his own jacket with him? That'd be pretty crappy, you know. Nigel Farage gets all the limelight, although your jacket was
just
the one
how bold.
Okay, so the King's Speech, which is the tradition where the new Parliament opens and the King delivers the new government's manifesto, or what the new government wish to achieve in this Parliament. It's called the King's Speech, but it's nothing really to do with the King. It's just the King reading out what his government, because it's the government of the King, is going to achieve in this Parliament, or hope to achieve.
Just how radical? And is this man borrowing ideas from an earlier era? Public ownership, more central government control, and strengthening trade union rights. After 14 years going in the other direction, all of that at the core of Labour's first King's Speech. Is this the most left-wing plan for government since the 1970s? The most senior union figure in the country says it could be.
I think without doubt it's going to be a radical King's Speech, and it needs to be when you look at the scale of the challenges that the government's facing. And I think it's sending a very clear message out to the electorate that the government will stand by working people, their families and communities. They'll intervene. You can use the label left wing. I actually think it's a King's Speech that's going to meet the needs of the British people.
I hope so. It has to. If it doesn't, then it's going to be a problem for the government if they want to stay in power. It'd be a problem for Keir Starmer if he wants to remain Prime Minister. So the King's Speech has to be something good. But also, you know, the trade unions want to still have some influence over the Labour Party, so they're going to say something positive. I'm not being cynical here, but it's, you know, they want Labour to succeed so that they succeed as well. Because if Labour is succeeding, they're improving things for ordinary people and they're improving the quality of life of workers, then this, of course, is good for trade unions as well.
A flagship bill to create Great British Railways to bring trains back into public ownership. Every train company back under state control by the end of the Parliament. Sir Keir Starmer, the first Prime Minister in 4 decades to embrace government solutions to private sector problems like this.
And this is it seems recently that the Tories were forced to take one rail network back into public ownership, and it actually went much better than when it was in private ownership. I'm not sure what about Transport for London, how that works. Can Labour now use HS2 to build houses? I don't know. See, this is the thing about money is unless it's ring-fenced, to be spent on something. And I don't know if HS2 money was ring-fenced, but it's not so much like money is stuck in a pile somewhere. It's sitting in a bank vault. It's money that was probably going to be spent on, it was maybe a certain amount of investment was linked to HS2. Now that that's stopped, it can be spent somewhere else. It doesn't really work like that, I don't think. Sinn Féin don't believe Westminster has any legitimacy in any part of Ireland. As a result, they would never take their seats. So it's nothing to do with the King's speech, or the King. It's nothing to do with allegiance to the King. It's Parliament itself.
A programme for the next 18 months. Signed off only on the third occasion this cabinet has ever met. Greater control of the curriculum, forcing councils to build homes or banning cigarettes for anyone born after 2009.
See, they can't force councils to build houses. What they can do is they can use a carrot and stick approach. They can say, look, councils, if you build X number of houses, we're going to give you X amount of funding. We're going to increase your funding by in direct relation to the amount of council houses that you build. Council and affordable housing that you provide, or the number of planning permission permits that are given. So if you increase the number of housing in your area, we'll give you access to more funding, or we'll give you more funding. That could be a good way to do it. And if you don't reach these targets, then your funding is going to be cut. So there would be an incentive for councils to push forward with house building, which of course is necessary. These councils will do anything for some funding too. Yeah, they'll do because a lot of them are on their knees. A lot of them are close to bankruptcy. Some are, technically they can't go bankrupt because if they do, they eventually are bailed out by the state. The central government takes over their responsibilities. So technically councils can't go bankrupt, but they're in financial dire straits if they are, and the new government say, look, if you increase the number of council houses, we'll give you more funding. And they go, fantastic, we'll do that. They'd be happy to do that because they've already other issues to deal with. For example, homelessness. So many people are homeless that they want to move into council houses, but they can't because there aren't any available.
The big difference between now and the last time Labour was in power. Under Gordon Brown and Tony Blair, they were prepared to splash the cash, but appeared cautious about the involvement of government in people's lives. But when the King...
So why is this a bad thing? The involvement of government in people's lives. Like, public services are necessary for a functioning society. Like, I understand there are some crazy people on the far right who are like, oh, we don't want government involved in our lives. These are the same people who want to ban protest and ban trans people, turn them into persona non grata. There are lots of extremists who make no sense whatsoever. But this idea that government is too involved in people's lives, I know that there was this thing of the nanny state in the past, but it was just an invented idea, an invented concept for political purposes.
Delivers his speech, Starmerism will appear the reverse. Not much money to spend, but much greater state intervention. Will it work?
The most
Yes and no. It will work to a certain extent if you give money. If you say to business, okay, here's some extra money, do something with it, they'll do it. But the problem, and we keep coming back to the same problem, it's Brexit. Because businesses want to expand, but in order to expand, it's not just about money, it's not just about investment, it's not just about being able to, build new factories and stuff. It's also about workers. Do they have access to the workers they need? Are they able to access the markets they need? Because maybe you're a producer in Britain, you'd like to expand, you'd like to start exporting to the single market, for example. Maybe you've only traded within Britain. If you want to export into the single market, that could be a challenge for you. So maybe you'll hold off. Maybe you'd like to expand your business, but you need workers. You can't access the workers you need. You can't find the skilled staff. So you're not going to upsize. You're going to maybe downsize. You're going to reduce. You're going to stay as you are. So one thing is about money. Money is really important when it comes to growing a business, but you also need workers and you need markets. And Brexit has cut off, or not completely cut off, but damaged a lot of that.
Contentious part of all, Angela Rayner's plan for workers, repealing Tory trade union restrictions, collective bargaining in social care, and giving employees a right to switch off from work out of office hours.
These are small things, but it's still something positive. Start off with something positive. They've only been in power for a couple of weeks now. Start off with something positive. The idea that workers should be allowed to switch off at the weekend. I think that's a wonderful idea. People, so many people are stressed out throughout the weekend because they have to check their email, they have to check their phone, they have to send emails, they have to take calls, they have to be, okay, let me work on Sunday evening so I can have everything ready for Monday morning. That's not how people should work. People should be able to disconnect at the end of the day, disconnect at the end of the week. People should not be staying up until 10 o'clock at night sending emails or doing reports. If you're doing something like that, then there's a problem in the workplace. They either need to hire more staff or they need to reorganize the work. From time to time, people may, do overtime. Overtime used to be a time where you'd have to work extra, but that seems to be eliminated now because it's a cost. It's cheaper just to put pressure on workers to work during the weekend. Just check in on, just check that email I sent you. I sent it to you on Saturday. Check it on Sunday. You could just do a quick report. Just do a quick reply. It just take 5 minutes. These things don't take 5 minutes. It takes an hour, and that's time you've lost. And there's also the psychological pressure. Oh, I better respond to this or the boss might get upset. I better respond to this. It might improve my chances, in my career. It might improve my chances climbing the career ladder. If I just respond to this and this. And of course, this eats into your private time. It eats into time that you have with your family, time that you'll never get back, which is more important than work time. Work should be there to pay the bills. Yes, if you enjoy it, that's even better. But it shouldn't become your life, because then you're better off not having a family or not having friends or not having any, and just working. And sometimes businesses want people to be like that. The business owner, I see it a lot here in Italy. The business owner believes the business is like their baby, their project, and they expect the employees to love it as much as they do. But of course, if something goes wrong, the employee will be gotten rid of without, by text message or something, WhatsApp message. But they're expected to come in at the weekend because, we're like a family. It's really sick, and it needs to change. And it's good if the new Labour government are going to change things like this. I think it's not going to be possible for everyone. I think many businesses will push back, but I think it needs to start at the top, at least, pressure from the government to force companies, maybe give them some sort of incentive if they create an atmosphere where people can switch off.
Is this a challenge for bosses?
It needs to be done in consultation with business and how we work together to make sure there aren't any unintended consequences. We don't want this to lead to fewer jobs being created here in the UK or have an impact on our overall international competitiveness.
The speech.
Happy workers are more productive. See, there's this thing of, if we reduce people's hours, then they'll be less productive. If we get people working a 4-day week, they'll be less productive. No, they'll be more productive because they're able to focus on the job in hand. They're able to take time off to rest, to recuperate, to refresh, and then they're more productive. But if they're working constantly, their quality of work goes down, their productivity decreases. Overworked people don't work very well.
The King delivers in here needs to show Keir Starmer is thinking big. How radical will it truly feel? He will never be this powerful again. Sam Coates, Sky News, Westminster.
Sam Coates is very dramatic. 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 Owners are more invested because they reap the rewards. Yes. They're the ones who end up with the Porsche at the end of the day, or the big house, or the big bank balance. So they're more invested in getting the job done and getting the product out the door. No way to stand up any of the 4 freedoms without getting them all. Freedom of AIK, and that won't happen until the UK rejoins the European Union, which is a long way off. It's when it comes to rejoining the European Union, yes, it's not going to be for another, I think, at least 10 years. And what we're going to see is probably closer alignment with the European Union over the next parliament, maybe the next 2 parliaments. But as I keep saying, you're going to need consensus in Parliament. You're going to need consensus within the political parties to rejoin the European Union before we hear anything about a referendum. Because there's no point in calling a referendum where the likes of the Conservative Party are against it, because they're going to whip up Project Fear once again, and they're going to convince people to vote against their interests. One final story, guys, before we finish. It's just the other one with the King's speech. Just a bit more on that. King's speech will be the biggest symbol of change Labour hopes to bring, says Beth Rigby. Wednesday will be the first time in 14 years that Labour has set the agenda for government. So for Keir Starmer's new administration, this moment is rich in symbolism and substance. The King's speech will be the foundation stone for Keir Starmer's much repeated mission to rebuild Britain. Number 10 will lay down over 35 bills to that end, with economic growth at the forefront of the programme for government. See, Labour keep saying that what they need is, if they grow the economy, this will mean they'll have more money for public services. But to grow the economy, you need to attract investment. Now, I think there are some things that will work in Labour's favour. For example, a change of government, a stable majority. This is something they can sell to business. Keir Starmer's not going away anytime soon. The Labour Party are going to be in power for a significant amount of time, so they can provide stability. Unlike the Conservatives, where you had David Cameron, then you had Theresa May, then you had Boris Johnson, then you had Liz Truss, then you had Rishi Sunak. So there was constant changing, but not just at the top. There was also government ministers were changing all the time. So different approaches to how things were done, were always on the cards. So that's something that has been eliminated, the lack of certainty. And that's something that is very positive. Businesses have said, look, we can understand, we can deal with ups and downs, but most important to us is stability. And Labour is providing that at the moment. So that's going to attract some amount of investment. But once again, I think the biggest, and I hope I'm wrong here, but I'm just looking at the numbers. But the biggest problems, I think, for businesses to grow and to help grow the economy is access to workers and markets. So if you're not able to access the single market as you were before, there are obstacles like this, costly obstacles. That's going to put some businesses off, or it's going to drive up cost for some businesses. So they're going to have to cut costs somewhere else. If they can't find the workers, they're not going to expand. It's just the reality. So one thing is about training up workers in Britain, but that's going to take time. I just used Ireland because I'm not waiting 10 years before I get my EU citizenship. Here's the same fix. Just rejoin the freedom of trade and freedom of movement. It will help out in the economy. Britain could introduce a new freedom of movement for EU citizens, but it wouldn't go the other way. There would still be the problems for British citizens. And I don't know how well that would sell politically, because it would be, you'd literally have Brexiteers saying, oh, look, you brought back freedom of movement, but you didn't bring back freedom of movement for us. It's for them, but not for us. Like the people who wanted freedom of movement ended for everyone. They were happy to see British people lose it as well. Some of them thought it wouldn't happen to them, but, exceptionalism and all that. But, they would be complaining about bringing back freedom of movement. Now, it depends on how you deal with the media. It depends on how you deal with the likes of Farage and the Tories, who seem to be chasing the Farage vote. Unfortunately, Brexit patriot Dyson found a way to expand without UK workers. Yes, when there's a will, there's a way. What an absolute charlatan that guy is. Telling people to vote for Brexit because it will save British manufacturing. And then as soon as the vote comes in, he moves British manufacturing to Singapore. Wonderful. Wonderful guy. And he's still invited on shows to talk about business. He's still held up as a great businessman. In a sense, he is a good businessman, a shrewd businessman. He was wrong about things, but it didn't really affect his, it didn't impact him too much. Both sides of freedom of movement. Yeah, but both sides of freedom of movement is not going to come back without EU membership. There's been talk about a bespoke deal with the European Union, something like Switzerland, something like Norway. But the problem with Switzerland and Norway, Switzerland was a drawn-out process lasting since 1992, I believe. Not something that the EU wants to get involved again with. And Norway is a very different economy. So be very careful when people say, well, we can be like this other country. Because when you have a bespoke agreement with, it's not even maybe a bespoke agreement, but when the EU has an agreement with certain countries, they have an agreement with those countries because of those countries, the way those countries are made up, because of their economies, because of the way they trade or what they trade. So it's very difficult to copy and paste something like that because it was designed, in a sense, for that specific country. So when Farage was talking about, well, we could be like Switzerland or we could be like Norway, he was lying because Britain is not like Switzerland and Britain is not like Norway. Very different economies. And the reason why the EU had those agreements is because of those specific countries, the way those countries are. But it sounds good. Oh, well, Switzerland is a wonderful country. We can be like that. Norway, look at what Norway has achieved. We can be like that. It's much more difficult. People seem to, if there's something people can learn from the European Union, it's that it's more like a ministry, like a department, a government department, than like a country. There was an EU spokesman, European Commission spokesman, I should say, who was talking some time ago, and people were asking, well, is the EU being spiteful towards Britain and stuff like that? And he said it perfectly. He said, the European Commission doesn't have feelings. These are the things we have to do, and these are the things we don't have to do, and these are the things we follow, these are the things we want to achieve. It's like a government department. The EU is more like a government department. There are, of course, politicians involved. There is a back and forth things, but at the end of the day, it's like a massive ministry. And, if anyone who has dealt with a ministry, if you're trying to get, planning permission, or if you're trying to get, a road widened, or if you're trying to get something developed, or you're trying to, get funding for something, you have to go through a process. And there's no feeling involved. There's no, negotiation involved. You follow the rules or you don't follow it. If you follow the rules, you get the thing done. If you don't, then you go back to square one and you try again. And that's a bit like what the EU is. Unfortunately, Brexiteers tried to paint it as some sort of evil empire. Remainers, unfortunately, I think some of them paint it as a bit like, a relative who's seen you go away but wants to welcome you back or something like that. And there are parts of the EU, like the member states want to have Britain back. But the European Commission, the European Union itself says, if you want to come back, you have to follow these are the rules. That's it. It's written down. What you have to achieve. And I think that's lost on a lot of people. And I don't mean that in a condescending way. It's not it's less of a political entity and more of a sort of bureaucratic entity. Ivan, thank you so much. That's very kind of you. I hope the King's speech includes changes to the Mental Health Act. This much this must include removing autism as a mental health condition. Autism is not a mental health condition. It's a neurological development condition. I do hope that, and I think, thanks for that. And I think there will be massive changes coming in. I think the new Labour government is going to take issues like this much more seriously than the Conservatives did. I think they're going to bring on board experts. We saw it with, for example, prisons. They brought on board an expert, somebody who actually understands how prisons work, understands what needs to be done. I think that was a great approach. They are going to make a lot of mistakes. I think there are people within the Labour Party who probably should not be there. We're going to discover them later on. But I think so far, some of the things that they've done are really good. We're just going to have to wait for others. But I fully support what you said here, that they need experts on board who understand neurological conditions, they understand mental health conditions, and they steer the government in the right direction when it comes to changing legislation or introducing new legislation. Yoni, thank you so much for that super chat. Norway isn't a member because they want to keep subsidizing domestic production more than we would be allowed for a member state, not the British way. Yeah, so Norway, as well said, thanks for that, and thanks for that clarification. Norway is a very different kettle of fish to Britain. And what works well in Norway may not work well in Britain, and what works well in Britain may not work well in Norway. And that's why it's very difficult to copy and paste some sort of agreement or some. And also, I don't think Norway would be too happy if Britain got a copy and pasted agreement, because they'd be like, hey, we put all this effort into, negotiating and working through the system, and then Britain can just come along and copy it. No, I don't think that would work. So guys, we're almost at the end of the stream. I want to say thank you so much to everyone who came on. Thank you so much for your support. Thanks to the moderators for doing a wonderful job as always, keeping it on the straight and narrow. Before we finish, we have our one for the road. I hope you enjoy this. And as always, stay safe and don't keep your ear to the ground. Don't worry, I'm okay. I'm just just extracting the urine, as they say. Let's get this going.
Welcome to Broken News. There's outrage after a British man was fined by his local authority for moaning about the first warm day of the year. The 42-year-old from Scunthorpe was also ordered to attend a weather awareness course. Our reporter has more.
Having spent the last 6 months complaining about how cold it is, retired electrician Eddie Whittingham fell foul of local rules on Tuesday of this week. Mr. Whittingham was heard saying, "Christ, it's hot, isn't it? I'm sweating my tits off," after temperatures peaked at 19 degrees Celsius on the first warm British day of the year. But Lincolnshire County Council said that they had obtained evidence that just 4 weeks ago, Mr. Whittingham had been heard saying, "Christ, it's cold, isn't it? I'm freezing my tits off." As a result, the authority gave the 42-year-old a fine of £75 and 3 points on his driving licence. Back to you.
A lesson to us all. That's everything from Broken News. You're up to date.
So you remember, no complaining about the weather. So guys, have a great week. I'll see you on Friday, same bad time, same bad channel. As always, take care, stay safe, and good night.